Eliza
would commonly eat very little. She was quite selective about the type of things that she ate. Usually small cuts of celery, carrots, maybe a small salad, and an assortment of fruits, fresh cut. Her favorite being, of course, the pineapple. "Hello, Reginald. How are you doing today?" Louise asked, adjusting her glasses as she took her seat. "Have your classes been going well? I hope you picked out that engineering book that I told you about. As I said before, even if you're not an engineer, it should still prove helpful. The mathematics is quite advanced." "No, unfortunately I haven't had the time," I replied, organizing the small section of meats and cheeses on my plate so that they would all line up perfectly. I did put in a request to have it ordered, but as of yet I haven't seen anything from it. But my governess assured me that she did order it. "What about you, Evans?" I asked, looking over to him as he looked around his plate, still unsure of what he wanted to eat first. "Has your father's whaling business been doing good?" "Well, my father says things have been better in the past. For some reason, whale oil simply isn't gaining quite the revenue it used to," he said, finally deciding to go with the fish for the first thing he ate. "What about your family?" "My father says that there's been a downturn in the steel market." "Is your father's business still doing all right?" Evans asked. "Well," I replied, "I haven't been made aware of any downturn in the steel market. Things seem to be going well as regular, but unfortunately, the last that I did hear, there has been some new competition in the steel market. Other manufacturers starting to move in on my father's territory. It might be why he's been busy as of recent." I finished organizing the food on my plate whilst still trying to think about when the last time I actually saw my father was. It had been at least 3 to 4 months since the last time that I had seen him properly. "Well, don't you worry your head, Reginald. I assure you, my family is still going to be needing lots of steel, especially now. We've recently made some weapons advancements that are, quite frankly, spectacular. According to my father, we're going to have to triple our demand for steel just to meet the expectations of the orders." I thought to myself, perhaps that's why my father has been away for so long. He might be running short of resources and looking for new sources of steel to meet the higher demand. It would make sense that my father would try to ensure that we didn't run out of raw materials to produce it. "Reginald, you really need to see the new designs for the repeater pistols that my father designed. And on top of that, the new Gatling guns are astounding. My father showed me the fully functioning prototype before it went into manufacturing. It is so cool to the touch. Even when you're firing it, it doesn't heat up like the old ones did," Louise said, giddily happy, with a big smile plastered across her face. She would always get happy when talking about designs of any kind, whether it was for weaponry or other general purposes. The new automobiles were also part of her can't stop talking about it list. Her father had recently purchased one of the newest automobiles on the market, and altogether they were becoming quite sensational. Even my family was thinking about getting one. "So, Reginald, has anything interesting been happening lately?" Evans asked, looking at me as he picked his way halfway through his fish. For a moment, I considered asking them if they had ever heard of the man in the pinstripe suit, or the strange things that he was able to do. But I contained myself, not wanting to seem like a child with imaginary friends, as my mother put it. "No, nothing much really," I replied. "My archery classes have been less than successful. I still can't seem to hit the bullseye, no matter how hard I try. I'm also finding the pulling of the bow quite taxing. Even at a short distance, it seems to be difficult." Louise jumped up, interjecting, "You should have your mom enter you into marksmanship classes rather than archery. Archery may have been prestigious in the past, but now firearms are always the way to go. You should ask her. I sighed, starting to pick the selections of meat from my plate and take them bite after bite, mixing them with cheeses, trying to get the maximum effect. If only Louise realized how much of a dangerous proposition she was asking me when she told me to ask my mother to change my classes. I simply sighed and replied, "No, I had better stick with archery. My mother is quite set on me being a master of it. My painting classes have also been a problem. My instructor says that I simply don't have the artistic flair for it. I'm not exactly sure how one acquires artistic flair, but I am trying." "You got off lucky," Louise says. "My art teacher always gets angry at me because I always paint blueprints. Why ever would I want to paint a silly bowl of fruit when I can draw a beautiful design for a cannon?" I chuckled a bit.
Eliza.
She's always had funny things to say, and her penchant for design had more humor in it than one would ever really expect. "You know,
Eliza.
there's actually been a large upturn in the number of ships that are being made with engines rather than sails. You might try your hand at designing a ship." "I don't know,"
Eliza
replied. "Building a ship sounds kind of boring." "Ooh, but maybe a ship built for war might be more fun. I wonder how big of a cannon you could put on a ship before it sank."
Eliza.
Starting to tickle at her chin. It was funny. Whenever she started making a design in her head, you could almost hear the gears turning. And the conversation continued like that for some time. We rather enjoyed talking to each other in order to pass the time at these gala events. This garden party was no exception. Usually everybody broke off into smaller groups to have conversations that fit their personalities, I suppose. After a while of somewhat amusing conversation with Evans and our resident engineer, I thought to myself laughingly, we began to hear the chiming of a large bell. Looking over to the center of the garden party, a man had been given a large bell and was ringing it quite loudly in the center of the party. "Attention, attention," he said. "We shall now begin tonight's special event. Please make way as we will be clearing sections of the center area in order to use this place." As the man cried out, he began to see butlers and maids and housekeepers shuffling around the center section of the party, moving tables and asking people politely to step to the side, after which they brought in a large center table. The table had nothing on it but the usual patterned tablecloth, but was larger than the rest, and they placed it in the center of the party. At the table they placed 2 chairs, one on either side, and on each section of the table next to the chair, a small bell was placed. The kind that was commonly used in restaurants and hotels when you needed to get attention from the employees who worked there. The man who was shouting before began to ring the bell again, announcing loudly, "Would all children of ages 10 to 15 please come forward?" I suppose this was the fun for children that Mrs. Sanderson seemed so excited about before. Myself, Louise, and Evans all got up from our chairs and began to make our way towards the center of the party. It wasn't wise to keep adults waiting. They get impatient. Afterwards, the man asked us politely to stand in a line from the left to the right beside the table. There were about 12 of us all together, giving us a nice even number. I personally was rather dreading whatever unsightly event this was going to be, most likely so adults could ooh and ah, talk about how adorable we children were. It felt much more like being a dog at a show rather than actually having fun ourselves. It was more about impressing the parents rather than us being impressive ourselves. But I sighed and simply stood there, politely, doing my best not to draw too much attention to myself, as I awaited whatever performance that we were supposed to give. The man with the bell began to announce loudly once again. As of tonight's events, our special event for the children will be a game that everyone should have plenty of fun playing. Tonight's game will be a quiz. Or should I say, a quiz off. The contestants will be chosen at random through hat draw. 2 names at a time will be chosen randomly from the hat. These contestants will sit down at their opposing sides of the table and be asked a series of questions. The first one to ring the bell will be the first one who gets the option to answer. Each set of contestants will be asked 3 questions. These questions will be drawn randomly from a variety of different topics. The goal is to answer more questions correctly than your opponent, and the best 2 out of 3 will win. After ringing the bell, you have 3 seconds to answer the question. If you do not, then your opponent will get the chance to answer, and if they successfully answer the question instead of you, the point will go to them. All in all, this will be a show of scholastic ability, where intelligence rules over all. Whose child will be victorious in this quiz game? I guess we'll find out.